Do you find yourself always carrying a knife because the one time you didn't, you really needed one? How's it going, everybody? I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny. And welcome back to another episode of Grail or Garbage, the series where I systematically and categorically rank and review knives like this Roxi 3. Designed by Todd Knife and Tool and manufactured by Knife Company. By the way, if you answered yes to that question, make sure you tap the like button because you, my friend, are in good company. Today, we talk about this guy, the Roxi 3, a knife that I've had in my possession for the last couple of weeks, due and large by the Apex Pass Around group and a channel called Blades.edc, who sent it my way so that I could check it in and weigh in with my 2 cents. Or 10 cents, or however many cents it takes to get it right. Because with Grail or Garbage, my ranking system, I aim to provide you with the context that you need to determine whether or not a knife like this Roxi 3 deserves a spot in your pocket. Does it deserve a spot in your EDC rotation? That's what it's all about. And we do that by giving you 5 categories: materials, ergonomics, Fidget Factor, the lock, and of course, fit and finish. Each category is worth 10 points. At the end, we will go ahead and add it all up and place it on our public leaderboard so that you know exactly what I mean when I say that I like a knife or I don't like a knife and why. Guys, I've had this knife for the last couple of weeks answering the tough questions so that you don't have to. And now that I have, it's time that we find out. Is the Roxi 3 a grail, or is it garbage? All right, everybody, so let's go ahead and talk about this Roxi 3 designed by Todd Knife and Tool. I have reviewed and ranked other Todd Knife and Tool designs. I've ranked the bestech Nyxie and the bestech exploit, but this is the first Todd Knife and Tool design that I've ranked by Knife Company. Now, this isn't the overview. That will actually be linked right there. If that's more of the style that you're interested in and you're not interested in knife rankings, go ahead and check it out. I do both. I'm very ambidextrous that way. Let's go ahead and start off with the first category. Now, the first category is materials. Materials is heavily weighed against the cost, and that is because it doesn't matter how good the materials are if it costs more than, well, what it should. In this case, when I looked it up, I was pleasantly surprised because it costs about $203 on the low end if you're looking at it from Knife Center. On the higher ends, I've seen them go for about $220 to $230, but still, that's actually about $30 to $60 cheaper than what the bestech versions go for. The Nyxie and the exploit were both more expensive, sometimes ranging between $270 to the $300 mark. And so $202 at Knife Center is actually really good, and if that's what you're interested in, I will link it in the description below. So let's talk about the materials. For the handle scales, we've got titanium. We have a really nicely sized titanium backspacer, milled titanium pocket clip, which does fit in and out of the pocket. It is on the stiffer side. However, it does have a decent amount of give. And then, of course, S35VN for the blade steel. Now, the blade steel is being S35VN, that's actually what Todd Knife and Tool puts on all of the knives that I've checked out and all of the knives that I've seen. And I can only assume that the designer actually prefers that over other steels because I know that with and with bestech, 20 CV is readily available. So I don't necessarily think that it's to keep the costs down because on the other knives that cost upwards of, $260 to $300, they also had S35VN. Now, I don't have any issue with S35VN. I wouldn't call it a super steel, but it is definitely a premium steel and one that's a really good one for everyday carry. And you get a decent amount of materials here that's very well milled out and knocked down. The materials are nice, and for that reason, the materials are going to get a solid 8 out of 10. Now, The second category is ergonomics. How does it feel in the hand? Does it make sense? Is it comfortable to hang on to? Can you switch up the grips? Well, to that last part, yes, but I don't really suggest it. It's not natural. Your thumb doesn't want to rest here on the butt of this handle scale. And when you look at the blade shape, it makes a whole lot of sense. This blade shape being more of a Wharncliffe style is going to be better suited for something like, your draw cuts. So how does it fit in those parameters? Well, because it's a front flipper, you get all the jimping that you need right up here, right up top, and your thumb is going to have all the grip that it needs for that support. You also get a nice finger cutout here, and that follows in by this plunge grind on that flat ground blade. The rest of it, it's not telling you where to put your fingers, but because it's not an overly large knife, there's only so many places that you can fit it. I do have a very tiny gripe, and that is that my sausage fingers wish that this finger cutout was actually a little bit deeper. I think that they could have gotten away with that. Take away, like 1/10 of an inch or something, and give me a place for my finger, my sausage fingers to really grip in there. That's kind of what I would have preferred in this scenario, but definitely didn't get. It would have been a little bit more comfortable had that been the case. Now, the jimping on the spine of the blade is, well, it's Todd knife and tool jimping. It makes sense. It gives you that extra grip, whether you're fidgeting with it or, using it like a real human being. And it's not uncomfortable. It's nicely knocked down around the edges. And that might just be in part to the fit and finish from the manufacturer, but we'll get into that later. As far as the styling on the handle scales, it does stick out, and I think that it looks cool. It doesn't get in the way of a comfortable grip. And then lastly, that pocket clip. Now, the pocket clip, it definitely looks cool and it's very functional, but as far as ergonomics are concerned, it's not necessarily the greatest. If I'm being completely honest, while I like the pocket clip, in this case, it doesn't add to the ergonomics and it doesn't disappear in the palm of your hand as good as some of their clips have on their bestech iterations. Check out the bestech Nyxie review if you want to see what I mean. But in this case, despite how much I like the pocket clip, it does not actually help with the ergonomics. It slightly takes away from it. And for those reasons, it's going to get a respectable, not super high, but respectable 7 out of 10 for ergonomics. The next category, as always, is my favorite, and that's going to be Fidget Factor. Do you want to play with it? Is it smooth? How's the detent? How's the pivot? Is it fun? Is it going to be comfortable to play with, or is it going to leave your thumbs sorely lacking? Well, here's the deal. When it comes to the Fidget Factor on this, you got options, okay? This is primarily, first and foremost, a front flipper, and then you also have this fuller here as well as this deployment hole. Ironically, this is the third Todd knife and tool front flipper that I've tried, so I actually do have some experience with these. I'll be upfront about this. This is not the best front flipper from Todd knife and tool that I have tried. That's not to say that this isn't super fun to fidget with, because it is. It just doesn't necessarily do it for me in the form of a front flipper. For example, that flipper part is rather blocky, and so doing some of the tricks like the finger roll, they're not the smoothest. You can do it for sure, but it's like, at least for me, I have to try a little extra hard. Let's talk about the other ways though. The detent is nice and crisp, which is perfect for a reverse flick, which you can do either from the deployment hole or from the fuller, and that's great. I absolutely love that. The action is running on bearings, and it's not fall shut, but it's not really going to take a whole lot to get it to fall shut. You just have to, give it a little tappy tap, and in its home it goes. So yeah, that's actually rather nice, and I would have personally preferred if they had just knocked that edge right off right there and then just done a dedicated deployment slash fuller deployment. That would have been perfect, because I'm willing to bet that I'm not the only one that thinks that that front flipper is a little on the lacking side as far as front flipper goes. I would have liked to have seen this be a little thinner and a little longer, and then it would have just been, well, it would have been really good as far as front flippers are concerned. All that being said, it's definitely fun to play with. It's not the most amazing thing in the world, especially since, at least in my opinion, that front flipper tab is not fully realized. And so for that reason, it's going to get a good, but again, not absolutely amazing, 7 out of 10. Moving on, let's talk about the lock. Now, the lock has a little bit to do with the ergos as well as a little bit to do with the fidget factor. This is, of course, a frame lock. I'm going to say that this locks up at about 25%. It does have a over travel stop in the form of that body screw, and then, of course, a lock bar insert so that your blade is not rubbing on titanium, because if you didn't know, one of those will wear faster than the other, and then you'll end up with some issues. And speaking of issues, does it have any? No, it actually feels rather good. The lockup is very solid. I have not had to mess with this at all since it got here. And you know, up down, there is no blade play at all. There is no double clutch. It actually rides rather smooth in that aspect. And so overall, it's a very good frame lock. And, you know, based on this blade shape, I know that this is not a knife that they really intended for people to fool around with. This is something that they're like, you know what, let's get some premium materials, a nice fun design out there, and then you can take this to work. You know, I feel like you could cut some carpet with this guy, and that frame lock is definitely good enough where I feel like if you did want to do, you know, some feather sticking, you could probably do that too. Again, you know, use your best judgment when using a knife like this for hard use. I don't suggest it for other bushcrafting activities, but it's your money, do you. Anyways, the frame lock is definitely good. It's a really decent frame lock, and it's going to get an 8 out of 10 for the lock. As far as the next category, we need to talk about the fit and finish. Now, fit and finish from We Knife Company has always been great, but it's not just about how well manufactured it is. It's also about how well realized the design was. Did they hit the mark? I would say for the most part, yes. There is a couple detractors here. This finger cutout, I do believe that it should be a little bit bigger, and I know that's very opinion based, and that's based off of my sausage fingers, but it's just honestly how I feel. Typical Todd knife and tool designs here, I wouldn't even need the logo on the blade to know that this is a Todd knife and tool design, and I really enjoy their designs. I think that it's a beautiful knife. I feel like it's futuristic, but it's not going too far or trying too hard, as many futuristic designs often are. Now, I do have a few gripes. The first is going to be on this pivot collar, and I'll see if I can't get it to focus in there on that pivot collar. So the pivot collar is a little bit of a volcano, and that doesn't make sense to me given that everything else seems to be nice and you know, a bit of a flat screw. And so, you know, for me, I'm just kind of wondering why. They could have done a flat screw for that pivot, and it is something that I brought up in my overview. Speaking more of the pivot, We Knife Company is addicted to putting their logo on the backside of the pivot, which, you know, it's fine. I don't have anything against the We logo, but let's be honest. The designer logo is what should go there, and that's what we are used to seeing on the bestech iterations. I feel like we could have done away with the We logo, put the Todd Knife and Tool logo there, and gotten rid of the extra billboarding on the blade, and it would have been great. Not that this billboarding bugs me. I really do like the logo. I just felt like it would have looked cleaner. The fit and finish, the Todd Knife and Tool backspacer is one that I'm a big fan of, and if you've seen my other videos, you know that that's because it protects the edge of the blade from getting damaged from crap in your pockets, and that's nice. The fact that that is added in there. More to the point, there is no skeletonizing on the inside of this blade, or excuse me, on the inside of these handle scales. It's, you know, it's rather slabbish, but it's slabbish in a way that is different than if you were to hold a Strider knife, or if you were to hold a, you know, Chris Reeves knife, because it's got levels to it. It's not just a flat slab as you get on the Spydercos, and that's nice. I like some dimension. Having a little bit of extra girthiness there actually definitely adds to the grip and adds to the comfort, and it also adds to the look. And I believe that this is a beautiful knife. And while we're talking about the looks, I really appreciate the fact that we have this nice flat gray followed up by these brass accented screws, which they are all the same size. Those are all T8s, whether you're taking out the lock bar insert or the over travel stop or the pivot or the pocket clips or the body screws, they're all T8. thank the Lord they have some common sense, because that is fantastic. Now, there is a decent amount of them, but it's not something that you should have to fret over too much if you do end up needing to take it apart for some maintenance. The fact that it's running on bearings is quite standard these days, and ultimately I think that this is great. It's got a couple detractors like I mentioned already. I do wish that that finger cutout was a little bit beefier, and I also wish that they had put the Todd Knife and Tool logo on the pivot instead of We Knife Company. And I also wish that the front flipper was more prominent and a little bit longer at the very top. I mean, look at this. You've got all the space in the world back here. You could have gone at least this far back. So, you know, they had the opportunity to do that, but they didn't. And, you know, for those reasons, even though I believe that the fit and finish from We is good, and in most cases just as good as Bestech, the design on this one did have a few things that I would definitely like to have changed. Would that keep me from buying this? No, and I'll prove it. I would give this a 7 out of 10 on fit and finish. If we add up all of those scores, the materials got an 8. Ergonomics is a 7. Fidget Factor is a 7. The lock is an 8. And fit and finish is a 7. It comes to a total score of 37, which should be no surprise. Think about it. Bestech and We Knife Company are neck and neck. They're very, very close as far as manufacturing capabilities, and they work with some of the same designers, like in this case, Todd Knife and Tool. They let the designer do all the work as far as telling them what to make, and then they do their magic to make sure that it comes out looking and feeling good. 37 is in the high recommend category, and I think that, you know, whether you're a fan of front flippers or not, because this is such a good knife for deploying through the fuller or through that deployment hole, there we go, I think that this is something that everyone could enjoy. And in fact, more to that point, because the front flipper isn't obnoxious, it is going to be more attractive to people that don't normally like front flippers, because it's just cool. Some will call this a super futuristic design. I don't think that it is. I actually think that the design is understated in a world of overstated knife designs. And so, you know, at the end of the day, I definitely think that if you have the opportunity to get one right now, go check them out on Knife Center. The link below is not an affiliate link. I don't have an affiliate status with Knife Center, but I do with Amazon. And I have listed some of my other recommended knives and maintenance products. So if you'd like to, you know, support the channel so that I can continue to make videos like this, or let's say that you have a knife and you think, you know what, that's cool, but I've got one that's better, shoot me an email. My email is in the description below. Guys, that's all I got for you. If you like the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, boo-hoo, there's a button for you too. And if you want to see more just like it, make sure you hit subscribe. I'm Rollshambo. I'll catch you on the flip side.